Representative Gyang, member representing Barikin Ladi Federal Constituency. I'm from Plateau State. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I rise with a motion brought under matters of urgent public importance on the massacre of over 215 persons in Plateau State. And this motion will require that the House consider it as urgent, and also
Honorable Emeka,
my humble self, Gyang, with Edward Gyang Pojok's son, Honorable Solomon Bulus Maren, Honorable Timothy Golu, and Honorable Jumbo Shekarau, on the massacre of over 215 persons in Plateau State. The House notes with shock and disbelief the massacre by killer herdsmen of over 215 persons, both young and old, men and women. Neither were children and toddlers spared. These are barbaric acts of man's inhumanity to man, ethnic cleansing, and genocide, which constitute the worst forms of wickedness and cruelty. Further notes that the outpouring of outrage and condemnation by Nigerians and the international community, including the Secretary General of the United Nations, the US, a session of the UK House of Lords, worried by the huge loss of lives and property and consequent bereavement by many families and communities. Concerned that not less than 15 villages and communities were destroyed in the well-coordinated attacks and mass killings, including Ganarop, Bet, Rankok, Rapomol, Ratatis, otherwise known as Dora Babuji, Boom, otherwise known as Maraban Kantoma, Ngar, Ruku, Soy, Tisan, Kachin, Kazok, Zargok, Kurawirom, Excellence, Shonong, and others in Bassa, Bokos, and Mangu local governments. Further concerned that analysis of previous killer herdsmen attacks has shown that they are usually guerrilla in nature, using sophisticated arms and machetes. Villages that have been completely sacked in Plateau State include, but not limited to, the following: in Barikin Ladi, 22, in Riom, 18, in Bassa, 5, in Bokos, 7. So far, 52 villages affected that have been totally sacked. Worried, dear colleagues, that the attacks have a pattern where once a community is attacked, it is cleansed by killing the native inhabitants, the houses burned and destroyed, and the vacated land taken over for occupation. The cycle is repeated and the pattern replicated in what has clearly manifested as a land-grabbing agenda. Further worried, dear colleagues, that the attacks, mass killings, and land grabbing is being perpetrated without an appropriate response of the nation's security. This indecisiveness, inadequate response, and seeming apathy of government has emboldened the killer herdsmen to continue in their acts of terror, ethnic cleansing, and land grabbing. Disturbed by the malicious destruction of hundreds of hectares of farm crops of the natives by herdsmen in a bid to cause hunger and economic strangulation of the natives, and further disturbed by the slow and ineffective response of NEMA, which aggravated the humanitarian tragedy. Per top, dear colleagues, that even while the President and Vice President visited Plateau State and gave assurances of security and safety, the attacks and killings persisted and extended to the burning down of not less than 5 churches, all in a bid to provoke a religious crisis. Further, per top, that virtually all theories known to peace building and dialogue have been experimented on the plateau, yet it has neither restrained nor stopped the land-grabbing motivated attacks and killings. It is therefore glaring that it is not the absence of dialogue, but the fact that engendering lasting peace will defeat the intentment of the killings, which is the land-grabbing agenda. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, the House applauds the rare display of humaneness and value for human life by the chief imam of Ngar, Malam Soho of Hausa extraction, who, along with one Abbas, a Yoruba Muslim, graciously shielded and kept many natives in a mosque at the risk of their own lives from the rampaging killer herdsmen. Indeed, these two deserve national recognition and honor. Aware that the Constitution in Section 1441, Sub 1, permits every Nigerian citizen to reside in any location of his choice without let or hindrance. The exercise of this right, however, does not extinguish the right of other citizens, especially host communities, to the ownership of their ancestral lands and customary heritages, or to peaceful cohabitation. Mr. Speaker, dear honorable colleagues, the House therefore resolves to 1. Condemn the killing and massacre in the strongest terms. 2. Government must take decisive action to stop the killings and secure communities that have been under persistent attacks. 3. The over 52 villages currently under illegal and forceful occupation in Barikin Ladi, Riom, Bokos, Bassa, and Mangu local governments should be recovered by government and the displaced owners resettled on their ancestral land. To do otherwise is akin to allowing a criminal to retain the proceeds of crime. 4. The masterminds and perpetrators of the attacks and massacre should be arrested and prosecuted, and there should be a coroner's inquest and forensic examination of the weapons and ammunition used to determine the cause of death, caliber, and source of the weapons used. 5. Urge Mr. President to go beyond verbal condemnation of the attacks to taking decisive and practical steps to give effect to Section 14, Sub 2 of the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, 1999, which places the primary responsibility of government to the security, safety, and well-being of citizens. 6. Direct NEMA to provide immediate relief to the IDPs to avert a humanitarian crisis, and a special reconstruction fund should be set up by the federal government in this regard. 7. Urge an overhauling of NEMA so that it can respond effectively in emergency situations. 8. The National Assembly, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, should immediately revisit the Constitution review exercise to empower states to establish state police for effective community policing and maintenance of law and order, This is as a result of the fact that the current security architecture of the nation has failed to bring an end to violent attacks across the Federation. 9, the House Committees on Army, Air Force, Police, National Security and Intelligence, and Emergency and Disaster Preparedness to ensure implementation and report back to the House within 3 weeks for further legislative action. And finally, we urge this House to observe a 1-minute silence in prayer for the souls of the departed. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
I rise to second the motion.
From anything if you add to it.
I represent Yagba. The Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria says that the security and welfare of the people is the primary purpose of government. Some few months ago, when Benue was ravaged by S-men, the government sent the IG to Benue. Up to today, nothing came out from it. When the president went to US and they asked him questions about this ravaging S-men, the president blamed it on the problem in Libya, that the people that are causing the problem brought in arms from Libya. The question is, let's even say those people are from outside. They must have collaborators here. Why is the president looking outside rather than looking inward to solve this problem? Let's face the reality. The President of the Federal Republic of Nigeria has failed in his constitutional duty to provide security and welfare for the people of the Federal Republic of Nigeria. And he has no solution. In fact, he's confused. He doesn't know what to do to solve this problem. And Nigerians need to find solution about this, because we cannot continue like this. Nigeria is far becoming a failed state, and something has to be done urgently. I will use this medium to encourage us as citizens of this country. We have a choice. A choice to remain as we are today, or to stop the menace that is going on in the country. God bless you. God bless the Federal Republic of Nigeria.
To set the tone for this very, very, very important debate. Mr. Speaker, the tone has to be right. As I speak, and I hope as subsequent speakers speak, I do not speak as an APC man. I do not speak as a PDP man or a Labour man. I don't want us to speak as Christians or Muslims. Neither do I want us, Mr. Speaker, to speak as Northerners or Southerners. Mr. Speaker, we need to speak as Nigerians. Mr. Speaker, great nations pull together in moments of crisis. We're in a crisis moment. Not too long ago, we're all aware of the 9/11 in the United States. They did not speak as Republicans or Democrats. Mr. Speaker, they spoke as Americans. Let us speak as God-fearing Nigerians. Because if we do not, we will lose the essence of this debate even before it starts. An opportunity to look for solutions. Mr. Speaker, this is a time when this House must be a solution-seeking House. Otherwise, we'll lose it. Honorable Speaker, honorable colleagues, I think it's important that we do not fall into the trap also of fake news, which does nothing but to ignite and stoke the fires and the embers
Silence, please.
Mr. Speaker.
Please. Silence, please.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Silence, please. Please, honorable members, please, silence.
Honorable colleagues, please, 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 let's listen to the leader in silence. Honorable Henry, you will have your own opportunity to make your points in case you have some points to make. But please, let's listen to him. He will run up their own, but let's listen to the leader make his points, please. Please.
Thank you,
Members in black, please, should listen in silence.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, I do understand the charged atmosphere. Mr. Speaker, this is a very, very critical moment for us as a country. What happened in Plateau State? What happened in Plateau State is unexplainable, particularly because even the lives that were lost, the people that were attacked, were the most vulnerable of the society. Women, the aged, and children. This House must react. But in reacting, we must make sure that we bring forth solutions. And I believe this is what the member who brought this motion is seeking. Mr. Speaker, I have two possible solutions that I want the House to consider and to consider very seriously. One, I believe everybody, bar none, in Nigeria is on one accord that the architecture of our security needs to change. This is a mission that must be accomplished. Number two, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I think the time has come, whereas there are arguments against state police, and they are credible arguments too, just as there are arguments for, I believe at this point in time, the arguments for the creation of state police far outweighs the arguments against. Otherwise, we will be acting like the proverbial ostrich, burying our heads in the sand. We have recently a state governor who dramatically resigned as the commander-in-chief in his state because he says he has no control over the police or chief security officer of his state. So it is important.
But Chinda, what is your point of order? Thank you.
I represent Toby Abo Federal Constituency. I'm an Ikoriman from River State. Mr. Speaker, my dear colleagues, the argument is on a motion, not a bill. And by Order 9, Rule 3, Sub-Rule 2, a member may speak for or against a motion. We cannot speak for and against in a motion. It is not a bill, so the House leader must take a clear position concerning the motion that is on ground. If he wants to make an amendment to the prayers, he is free under the rules to propose an amendment. But his argument should be in tandem with our rules, either for or against. That's my point of order, sir.
The second solution, apart from the change of the architecture, the second solution, I think, Mr. Speaker, the time has come, and I have with me a constitutional amendment for us to amend our constitution to establish the state police. Mr. Speaker, I think it's important that we tie this. There are legislative tools and things that can be done to fast-track the process. There are some things that are important to some people, and there are other things that are more important to other people. The PIB bill, which we seek to rush to pass, because everybody wants it, because it's good for the country. Mr. Speaker, if we're all in agreement on the need for the establishment of a state police, rather than just talking about it, I think it's time, like I said in other countries, they call it pork barrel. It's time to attach that amendment to the PIB bill and present both so that both will be fast-tracked and be sent to the President for signature. Those are the two solutions that I see, and I'm sure there are many others. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Legislators and security agencies on the emerging security challenges in the West African region. I believe they will benefit from the debate that is currently going on the floor. I want to introduce to us members of the delegation that here in the chambers. We have Honorable Seth Kwame Achupong from Ghana. Is he here? Sorry if I murder your name. I think it was Winston Churchill that says you're free to pronounce a foreign name any way you like it. We have also Honorable James Agala from Ghana, Ghanaian Parliament. You're welcome. We have Honorable Bakono Ambrose from Burkina Faso. You're welcome. We have Honorable Sogo Diadone from Burkina Faso. We have Honorable Mohammed from Niger. We have also Honorable Nanzo Isaac and Honorable Adam Mustafa, Majority Leader, Ghana Parliament, former Defense Minister, Republic of Ghana. See around. We have Basi. We have Brigadier General A.Y. Insaya, Ghana Army. We have Bagudi Candidates. We have Toplik. He's standing. We have Edison from FAN, Burkina Faso. General Yusuf Shalangwa, representing Chief of Army Staff, Nigeria.
My name is Edward Pojok. I represent JOS South, JOS East of Plateau State. Mr. Speaker, in beginning, may I apply that because I am directly involved in the attacks, by virtue of the fact that I'm from that area, I may be too emotionally distraught to articulate clear views in support of the motion. So I took the trouble to write down a few words in that regard. But I do know that our rules say that in debating a motion, you should not read a paper, but I may not be as articulate as I would want to be. Mr. Speaker, in supporting the motion, may I also commend all of us, led by your good self, for visiting us in JOS and commiserating with us, and also the leadership of the country, the president, the vice president, and even the international community. Mr. Speaker, I will also be adding flesh to what my brother, Honorable Gyang, mentioned. Mr. Speaker, if what happened on the 23rd, as the Saturday, the ill-fated Saturday, were a movie, it would be classed or described as a horror movie. And the scenes, too lurid and gory for even right-thinking persons to even watch. Mr. Speaker, Gashish, the district that is an issue, is made up of so many villages. And it was the source of hydroelectricity, not just Plateau State, but even outside Plateau State in colonial times. But that 11 villages, not 11 houses, 11 villages will be simultaneously attacked over 7 hours without response from the security agencies. Even when we have security in that area, it raises so many questions. And I propose to ask some of those questions. And I thank God that today we even have security agents, not only from Nigeria, but from other African countries, so that we have to ask ourselves the right questions so that we get the right answers. Mr. Speaker, given the time it took for the massacre to be carried out, why did the security agencies not respond to repel the attackers and save lives? Given that Barking Ladi has been in the eye of the storm for some time, going back to 2012, when a sitting and serving senator, Senator Gyang and Honorable Gyang Fulani, lost their lives in the same place and in a similar manner when they went to attend a funeral. Mr. Speaker, how come till today we've not found a solution? Mr. Speaker, in the same area too, a former head of service of the state, Mr. Moses Guam, was killed in his wife's shop in the same local government. In fact, just near a military checkpoint. So, Mr. Speaker, the question is, what are the military near a checkpoint when there will be attacks and will not be able to repel such attacks? Mr. Speaker, why would the attacks continue even when the president and commander-in-chief and the vice president visited JOS? Because as we speak, even the newspapers are awash with stories that the attacks are continuing even up till now. Even there was a curfew declared in the state, but some persons at 1 a.m., at 3 a.m. were still attacking. So was the curfew meant to keep some people at home and allow some other people to go and attack? Or what are the issues? Mr. Speaker, what responsibility does the state have to the victims? And has the state discharged that responsibility? If not, why? Mr. Speaker, are we beginning to see the symptoms of a failing state? If so, we have to interrogate some issues, formulate some questions, and answer them immediately. Mr. Speaker, what are the remote and immediate causes of these violent attacks? We have to identify the perpetrators and prosecute them. The issue of unknown gunmen cannot just wash and is not acceptable. Mr. Speaker, we have a duty to the deceased to avert intensification of the attacks, which may wipe out some ethnic groups. If doing so means that we have to seek international support, let us do so. Because like the mover of the motion mentioned, over 52 villages have been wiped out on the face of the earth. Mr. Speaker, this is a very serious issue. Again, Mr. Speaker, is it a farmers' herders clash or a violent attempt at land grabbing, including uprooting a people from their territory? Are certain occupations the exclusive preserve of some ethnic groups? For instance, is the rearing of cattle exclusive to the Fulani? Over the weekend, there were reports of the rustling of cattle belonging to Archbishop Benjamin Kwashi, the Anglican Bishop of JOS, leading to the killing of his security man. Does this not give a lie to the exclusivity of rearing of cattle by the Fulani, given that Archbishop Kwashi is an Ngas man from Plateau State? Is cattle rearing a criminal enterprise done with criminal economic motives or an ethnic agenda? Cattle rustling, undertaking to deprive another ethnic group of their property? Do some citizens, Mr. Speaker, outside those mentioned in Section 308 of the Constitution, have immunity against criminal prosecution? If not, in the face of public statements by some of the individuals on the attacks amounting to justification based on retaliation, why have those persons not been prosecuted? Mr. Speaker, is there a nexus between this crisis and previous ones? Why has there not been implementation of previous white papers. What is the outcome of the investigation into the deaths in Mayango, the death of the paramount traditional ruler of Bokos local government area, a first-class chief, the Saburon, the former head of service, Moses Gom, and so many others in Plateau State? Have the investigations been closed? What are the emergency agencies? Why are they so slow to respond by leaving the victims at the mercy and fate of good Samaritans? If it took NEMA about a week to respond, can it be said that it is being responsive to those issues? Mr. Speaker, in conclusion, the blood of those killed is crying for justice. Murders are non-compoundable offenses. The act of killing another human being is considered a heinous capital offense against the state and not merely the individual or the family of the deceased. That is why the punishment for murder is death, but after judicial proceedings. This is because by Section 33 of the Constitution, no one is allowed to take another person's life except through due process of law. If the service chiefs are given marching orders with a timeline to stop the killings and to arrest the attackers, or they will lose their jobs, and they know that government means it, they will do just that. Even if the service chiefs are going to be changed, the next ones must be given clear marching orders and timelines. Mr. Speaker, the rules of engagement of the security forces should be changed with more deployment to the villages, with clear orders to act whenever there is an attack, and commanders to be held responsible for any attack without arrest or action to successfully quell the attacks in areas where there is presence of security forces. Because, Mr. Speaker, if you ask the soldiers, they will say, we're not giving any order to shoot. So what are you doing there in those places? Mr. Speaker, the security architecture should be changed immediately to integrate traditional and community rulers, women and youth groups, particularly in intelligence gatherings. Mr. Speaker, it has been mentioned here that governors are chief security officers of their states. Mr. Speaker, this issue should be looked into. Speaking as someone who I think has read the Constitution, I have not seen where governors are described as chief security officers. Maybe that's why we need to do some amendments to look at this issue very, very critically. Mr. Speaker, we should accommodate state police and allow security councils of the states, under leadership of the governors, to give some limited orders to even the armed forces, if only for the purpose of quelling insurrection within their states. Currently, there is no constitutional provision to that effect. Mr. Speaker, since states like Plateau, with federally permitted security outfits like Operation Rainbow, which incorporates local vigilante and regular security forces, should be encouraged to ensure effective implementation. There should also be a comprehensive audit of all cattle, whether stationary or in transit, so that they can immediately be undertaken with biometric verification for identification of both the cattle and their owners, and before any cow is sold, the owner must be ascertained and records kept. NEMA operations should be overhauled, and the organization given a maximum of 12 hours within which to positively respond to distress calls and provide succor to communities in distress. Their intervention should include firefighters to immediately extinguish any conflagration, medical supplies, including sanitary pads for women, clothes, transportation of victims to hospitals, provision of water, assistance in burial, and even embalmment of corpses. If our security forces cannot fish out the attackers, the international community or criminal court, investigators and prosecutors should be invited to do the needful. Mr. Speaker, the House relevant committees should interact with the relevant government agencies within 3 weeks to brief this House on efforts made to stop the attacks, the arrests made, ongoing prosecutions, if any, and any convictions secured as a result of the attacks. Mr. Speaker, we're also asking for a coroner's inquest so that we determine the exact cause of the deaths, a forensic ballistic skills, so that we know whether those weapons are military weapons, whether they were locally produced weapons, or whether they were imported from outside Nigeria. let us not be under no illusion that there is an existential threat to not just Plateau State or the communities concerned, but even Nigeria as a whole. May the souls of all the departed rest in peace. May God restore peace to Plateau State. May God restore peace to Nigeria. Mr. Speaker, I so support.
Chair, Foreign Relations Committee.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, sir, for yielding the floor to me. My name is Nenna Elendu KJ, member representing Bender Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, sir, I am from Abia State. Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank you very, very much indeed for calling me up to contribute my share to this tragically timely motion. Mr. Speaker, of course, my dear colleagues will look around the floor of the House and they will see that a good number of our colleagues are in black. And the reason we're in black is because the country mourns. Mr. Speaker, I shall take instructions from what the Leader of the House said. And he said that as we debate this motion, we should not debate this motion as people from any section of the country, from any political party of the country, but that we should debate this motion as Nigerians who collectively mourn the death of our fellow citizens. Last week, somebody said to me, I lost one cousin in the JOS crisis. And I said to the person, I lost 216 cousins in the JOS crisis because they could have been my relatives. And so, Mr. Speaker, sir, you would agree with me that month in, month out, week in, week out, we have motions akin to this type of motion where we decry the senseless killings in our country and where we stand up and offer 1 minute silence. But I shall follow the instructions again of the Leader of the House.
Please, honorable members, silence, please. Please, honorable members should listen in silence, please.
Thank you. And try to come up with what I have called the program of action. Mr. Speaker, there is a saying where I come from, that when two relatives going to have a meeting, if they all come out laughing, then they have not spoken the truth to each other. And so today, Mr. Speaker, sir, I shall try to speak the truth on what I consider to be the program of action. And I have 4 subheads. But the first subhead, Mr. Speaker, sir, is what I call the Fulani silent majority. Mr. Speaker, in Bender, where I come from, for 3 generations at least, we have had Fulani headsmen who have lived with us in our communities, in peace, and have reared their cattle. I believe that that is the same Fulani that Mr. President referred to when he said that Fulani are known to walk around with their cattle peacefully carrying sticks. Mr. Speaker, those are the Fulani that all of us know and have known in our communities. But, Mr. Speaker, there is also the Fulani that on the Global Terrorism Index is named as the 4th most deadly terrorist organization. There is also...
Please, honorable members, please.
Please.
Wait first, sorry. Mr. Speaker, sorry, I must interject at this point. If Honorable Jobe insists on making noise, we will make this house unbearable for anybody today. Because
please.
come to that point.
No.
Why are you trying to? Somebody is on the floor and you won't let that up. Why are you making so much noise?
Deputy Minority Leader, please, can you take your seat? Honorable Jobe, Deputy Minority Leader. Deputy Minority Leader. Deputy Minority Leader. Honorable Jobe, please.
Please.
Honorable Jobe,
Please.
please maintain your quiet.
Please. Honorable members, please.
Honorable Jobe. Honorable Ihama. Honorable Jobe. Honorable Ihama. That's not your seat. Go back to your seat, please. Can you leave that place? Yes. It's not your seat. Leave. Honorable Jobe, is that your seat? Officially, is that your seat? Go back to your seat. Honorable Ihama, go back to your seat, please, quickly. Everybody should take his seat.
Please.
So, Honorable Jobe.
Please, honorable members, please.
Please maintain your calm and let's do the business of the House peacefully. Honorable Jobe, I don't want to call your name again, please. Honorable Nenna, please round your debate.
I was saying, Mr. Speaker, there is the peaceful, silent majority of Fulani that have lived in all our communities, the ones that Mr. President referred to as the Fulani who go around with sticks and who just want to herd their cattle. But there is, unfortunately, Mr. Speaker, sir, the Fulani who belong to number 4, who were named as number 4 as the most dangerous terrorist group in the Global Terrorism Index, who operates within West Africa, who from 2001 to 2018 have killed 60,000 people, who since the beginning of this year have killed 1,917 people, who according to the body of the motion have sacked and occupied 53 villages. Mr. Speaker, sir, to my brothers who are the Fulani, the peace-loving Fulani, I ask them that the time has come to name and shame them, that the time has come for them to call them what they are and differentiate between those ones and these ones, so that as Nigerians who have always lived in peace and harmony, we can continue to live in peace and harmony with our Fulani brothers. Mr. Speaker, sir, the second one is to the United Nations. I call on the United Nations and I thank the Secretary General of the United Nations, Guterres, for speaking about the killings in Nigeria. But I also agree with what he has said, that it is a toxic, incendiary mix of climate change, resource control, tribal, ethnic, religious, as well as sheer criminality. And they accuse the Nigerian government of verbal condemnation. But the United Nations also is guilty of verbal condemnation. 153 villages have been wiped out, Mr. Speaker, sir. It starts to make the word clash pale in comparison to what it is that is going on. We start to ask ourselves the question, does it have genocidal tendencies? Mr. Speaker, if it seems like genocide, if it tastes like genocide, if it walks like genocide, Mr. Speaker, sir, it is genocide. And therefore, for over 60 years ago, the United Nations came up with a treaty, the Anti-Genocide Treaty. If Nigeria, as well as all these countries, are signatories to this convention, then I think that it is time for the United Nations to call it what it is and start to activate it. It is very reminiscent of what happened in Rwanda, when for over 2 months the United Nations was debating the definition of genocide while the killings carried on unabated. I believe that if the world has started to notice that one of the strongest, most populous countries in the world is on the brink, then we must realize that should anything happen to Nigeria, the entire sub-region, and indeed the world will be shaken by this. I believe, at this time, the third one is to the government. And I speak to the President and the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces when I say to him, Mr. President, the buck stops on your table. This morning, I had the very unfortunate displeasure of listening to Femi Adesina as he spoke about this issue. And I saw insensitivity at a time when he should have been very sensitive. I saw him when they asked him about ancestral land. He said, it is better to live on top than in the ground. I found him extremely insensitive. This is the spokesman of a country that is mourning. Mr. Speaker, sir, I have heard the narrative coming out of government. Government has said to us that the people who are perpetrating these crimes are not Nigerians. And yet, in the same breath, government says to us to open up and live with them. Mr. Speaker, if they're not Nigerians and they're invading our land, then it means that we're opening up our land to foreign militia. It is war, Mr. Speaker. You cannot ask us to live with people in one breath and tell us that these people are not Nigerians. At the end of the Civil War, government had deliberate policies for integration. What were those deliberate policies? NYSC, federal schools, so that there would be integration and the children would grow up knowing that we were one country. I do not see any direct integration policies except to say, live in peace. Mr. Speaker, I do not believe that that is the way to go. In the words of John Fitzgerald Kennedy, he said, man must put an end to war, or war will put an end to man. That is our responsibility as government. Mr. Speaker, Babangida has to wake up to his responsibilities. If indeed these people are not Nigerians, then let us check the borders, let us check the porous nature, let us come up with serious programs of action against the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Mr. Speaker, my colleagues have spoken about the security chiefs. I must lend my voice to that. Mr. Speaker, finally, my program of action is to us as citizens of Nigeria. I would ask that all of us go and watch 2 movies, Hotel Rwanda and One Night in April. Nigeria dances very dangerously on the brink. Then in Rwanda, it was the radio that made them dehumanize people. Now it is our telephones and social media. Social media caused the Arab Springs. Mr. Speaker, sir, we have taken to passing around stories, images that will never heal this country. I know that it is very painful, but let me say that over 80% of the users of social media are below the age of 30. 35% of that number are below the age of 18. Mr. Speaker, even if we were to stop the killing today, hatred, suspicion, divisiveness is etched into the DNA of the next generation. It will take this country at least 40 years for us to start to look at ourselves in the way that we did. I would ask that mainstream media should please have responsible reportage. And as we send these pictures around, we should make sure it is true. We should make sure it doesn't fan the embers of hatred. We should make sure that as much as possible as citizens, we do not suffer from the tragedy of the incomplete narrative. I know that even though 200 people were killed in JOS, another 250 were saved by that imam. When we tell those stories, we should tell them together. I would ask, therefore, my dear colleagues, that yes, 1 minute silence is not enough, and I hope that as I have given this, that my other colleagues would add to what it is we have done, because this is not a time for blame games. This is not a time for passing the buck. This is the time for us to realize that our country is bleeding and our country needs to heal. Thank you.
Ogbadibo, Opoku Federal Constituency. Mr. Speaker, I'm from Plateau State. The Vice President went to condole with the government and people of Plateau State. All the governors under the aegis of the Governors Forum went and condoled with the people of Plateau State. This National Assembly, represented by your good self, went to condole with the people and government of Plateau State. So I find it most uncharitable for our own colleagues to get up or to stand in this chamber to begin to say that we should not rely on rumors. As much as we know that there are certain informations out there that are not correct, as much as we know that some informations in the social media are not correct, or is not correct, the subject matter today has to do with the killings in Plateau. So I find it despicable for our colleagues to stand here to begin to talk about rumors, and we should not rely on rumors. Whether we like it or not, over 200 people died. Today we are talking of Plateau. We talked about Benue. There's still killings in Benue as we speak. People are dying in Taraba. People are dying in Zamfara. Honorable Babale stood up and said clearly, the system has failed. The system has failed. What is the solution? Are we going to finish today resolving that, okay, in 3 weeks' time, they should lay a report? What now happens after that? Mr. Speaker, from the 1st of January up to now, there is no week that we don't sit here and talk about people being killed in various parts of this country. The House has resolved that the IG of police should resign for his inability to contain security issues in this country. Nothing has happened. Even the governors have resolved and given timeline to the president that if the security chiefs don't do anything, they should be fired. And then we come here, somebody will say, oh, it is not Hausa Fulani, oh, it is not this, oh, it's not that. That is not the issue. The issue is that those that are in charge of security or securing lives and property have failed. And we must all resolve to say that they have failed. We were very quick, and the president or the executive was very quick to condemn the actions of IPOB. We all know that IPOB, as a socio-political organization, never killed anybody. All they were asking is for self-determination, and they were proscribed. But today, we have some socio-political organizations, the Mieti Allahs and the rest of them, openly, saying all sorts of things. Why can't we get up and condemn their actions? Are we afraid? This matter is beyond what we are sitting here and we are saying. Even the House of Lords in the UK are taking this matter very seriously, more seriously than we sitting here. And there is a saying that for there to be peace, there has to be war. What is happening today? We've all agreed that Nigeria is sliding into becoming a failed state. We've agreed on that. And nothing is happening. Nope, I can assure you that between now and next week, there will be further killings. I will come back here to begin to debate it. So we cannot stand up to say we are trying to window dress or praise a government that has failed. We are part of the government. We are part of the government whether we like it or not. So what we should do is to resolve here, not only condemning the killings, but also to condemn those that are responsible, those that are in charge of the protection of lives and properties of Nigerians. So, Mr. Speaker, in closing, I would like to call on all of us that the so-called joint committees that are going to go out there, whatever their report is going to be, let it be laid before us here, and we must act on the resolution of the committee. I thank you for listening, and I pray that God will help us, that we will sit here by next year as one house, and we will not be sitting in our various villages to become warlords. Thank you very much.
And I represent the Ala Federal Constituency of Kano State. Mr. Speaker, I find it necessary to lend my voice to this very important issue, which bothers all of us, and it should bother all of us as Nigeria. Mr. Speaker, I want us, in trying to discuss this issue, to put this issue in its proper perception.
Silence, please.
And we try as a
Please,
house,
honorable members, take your seats.
we should try.
Order.
We should try as a house of the
Please,
Nigerian
honorable
people,
members, take your seats. Please.
we should try as a house of the Nigerian people and see that we talk in such a way that there will be peace and love in every section, in every corner, in every constituency in our dear country, Nigeria. We must tell ourselves the truth. I have been saying it on this floor, and I will say it again. There is no security everywhere in Nigeria. The security system and the
Please,
apparatus
honorable members, please,
have
silence,
all
please.
broken down. The primary responsibility of government, as enshrined in our Constitution, talking of Section 14(2)(b), of protecting life and property of every citizen of Nigeria, that portion of the Constitution is being overlooked. Nigerians are dying everywhere, in the south, in the south-south, in the east, in the north, everywhere. What is the government doing to protect the life of every Nigerian? I want us not to be too sentimental on these issues. Mr. Speaker,
silence,
we must
please.
not, in the process of our debate, I want to repeat, we must not criminalize any tribe. We must not criminalize any profession. Rearing of cattle is a profession. If you do it in the right way, you do not infringe on anybody's right, you should not be criminalized. Being a Fulani man should not be seen as a crime in Nigeria. When people are killed from here, Abuja, I'm just trying to cite an example, going to Kano, you don't know who kills them. So please, in the course of our debate, I want us to be very, very careful. I want us to look at the issues with a heart that shows love and concern for all our brothers from every part of this country. We truly care about the well-being of this country. The way things are going, Mr. Speaker, I want to say this, I want to be heard very clearly. The way things are going, if something is not done by Mr. President, we may wake up, we will not have a country. So I believe the presidency, which has control of this security apparatus, should do more to make sure that there is peace everywhere in Nigeria, to make sure that the provision of Section 14(2)(b) of the Constitution is obeyed to the latter. I can understand, Mr. Speaker, it's like my colleague here are no longer interested in this debate because as I'm talking, everybody is making noise. So I will sit down. Maybe, Mr. Speaker, you just put it to vote. Thank you.
This row, Honorable Toby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Honorable colleagues, my name is Toby Okechukwu. I represent an area of Woji River Federal Constituency from Enugu State. Mr. Speaker, if we are seriously paying this Parliament, our colleagues will simply sit down and listen.
Silence, please.
Mr.
Order,
Speaker,
honorable members, please take your seats.
Mr.
Please.
Speaker, I thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. Mr. Speaker, in our place, they say Abu Sibo Tule Omulaiko. What does it mean? If you are stung by an insect in one side of your buttocks, you have to learn. You don't show him the other one to sting you. In our place too, they say people are complaining about rain that beat them. And they were told, please, look at the heavens. Another rain is coming. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, why do I say this? Mr. Speaker, I schooled at University of Calabar. I also schooled at University of Lagos. My wife graduated from Ahmad Bello University. And for the past 25 years, what is happening in this country is gearing towards shaking my belief and confidence in this country. But Mr. Speaker, my belief is that they will not succeed. I'm supremely confident that we shall come. But this can only happen if we produce and introduce some civility in our country. Mr. Speaker, in 1963, Haile Selassie, while speaking to the United Nations, and he was the first head of state to speak to the League of Nations. He was the first head of state to speak to the League of Nations and the United Nations. And he said, throughout history, it has been the inaction of those who could have acted, the indifference of those who should have known better, the silence of the voice of justice when it mattered most, that has made it possible for evil to triumph. Mr. Speaker, whether it is in the Northeast, whether it is in Birinungwari, whether it is in Plateau State, whether it is in Benue State, whether it is in Kaduna, Southern Kaduna, there is no blood that is of a different color. They are all red. And what a responsible parliament and a responsible government must do is to make sure that whatever gives the impetus for these Nigerian bloods to be shed must be stopped. It has no color, Mr. Speaker. And unfortunately, we continue to look and see these things happen every day. Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, you can give the governor of Imo State a lot of credit. Apart from the fact that he can mold sculptures and call people to inaugurate them. He is also wonderful in vocabulary. And he said that it amounts to Iberiberism. When there is a constant state of foolishness in a country, and when something continues to happen to you repeatedly, it is preposterous, Mr. Speaker. It is Iberiberism in the highest esteem. So, Mr. Speaker, we must all make sure that we don't turn our country to Iberiberism, because it will be so sad and unfortunate. And this requires leadership. If you are in a debating society, you may want to win an argument. If you are in leadership, you provide solutions. And what we are asking this country and this leadership, including our humble selves, is to provide. And other people have suggested that the security architecture of this country has to change. We must not allow this thing to continue to happen. I was reading our former Speaker Tambuwal the other day, and he called for state police. I was reading Honorable Yari, the present governor of Zamfara State. He called for state police. I read Ambode called for state police. I read Governor Wike. He called for state police. Mr. Speaker, I've read all the governors. The Governors Forum called for state police. Where is the opposition to it? Every state government is either civilian JTF or one vigilante or the other. Whatever name you call it, they are all they amount to state security agencies. And in other words, means state police. So, Mr. Speaker, honorable colleagues, I want to demand of us that we have to fast-track a constitutional amendment that will make sure that we have security, our security in our hands. And to Mr. President, the Commander-in-Chief, I will end with these words. Mr. Speaker, I will end with these words from Haile Selassie again. He said, there is always something moving, brewing. There are ambitious people everywhere, wicked people. The only thing to do is to deal with them with courage and decision. One must beware of uncertainty, weakness, or conflicting emotions that lead to defeat. So I conclude with pleading with my colleagues, let us be patriotic. What we need is statesmen. It's not who wins the argument. Let us provide solution for our nation. Let us produce solution for our citizens. It is only when that is done that we can earn our living and justify our presence here. Thank you very much.
Okay, no, we'll take one.
Speaker, let us address the facts, and I would plead with my colleagues to please lend me a listening ear so that we can all address these issues the way they should be addressed. What today is the reality? My honorable colleagues, it is not fake news or social media hype that 215 people were killed in Plateau State. That is the reality. It is not fake news or social media hype that in one fell swoop, over 100 people were killed in one community in Benue State. It is not fake news. This is the reality. It is not fake news that some of us have witnessed firsthand herdsmen brandishing AK-47s and have been paraded on national television as being responsible for killings that are perpetrated in certain areas of this country. My honorable colleagues, this is the fact. Now, as much as we appreciate what is going on the social media, we should be addressing the fact. Is it acceptable to all of us here? Whether or not people are carrying fake news, what is the reality? What has happened? Is it acceptable in any humane society? The other question to ask, what do our security agencies do when they are not responding after the fact to the killings of people? I once again want to express my extreme disappointment to the armed forces of Nigeria that I used to hold in such high esteem, because they appear to only respond after the fact. Have we lost every sense of intelligence gathering and trailing the path of killers? Have we lost our professional training such that we cannot go after those people our president has alluded to that are coming from outside our country to kill us? Is that not a state of war? Let me summarize this very simply. The fundamental role of government that we go to elect every 4 years is enshrined in our Constitution, and that is the welfare and the security of the people. My colleague, Honorable Babale, alluded to the successes that have been recorded in Rwanda. Why is that the case? Is it the people only themselves that collectively resolve the problem? It is the leadership, the government, that is the driving factor to the resolution of any issue in any nation. That is why we have a government. I find it worrying that our government will start to call on all of us to take note of people who are sponsoring these killings. Can they please reveal to us the identity of those people responsible for the killings? Because I think it's an abdication of your responsibility as a government if you choose to pass the buck. The successes recorded in other nations like Rwanda are because of the moral resolve of that government to ensure that the security of their people is maintained. That is the summary. Solutions, because we have all talked about the issues. Solutions. This esteemed National Assembly has approved every budgetary request by this administration for the security forces in the past and in the current year. But this has not stopped the spate of killings. This National Assembly has condemned like a broken record and has made recommendations about the service chiefs and the security situation, but has that been heeded to by those who are directly in control of the security agencies? That has not been heeded to. Now it behoves on us once again to realize that the issues of restructuring have to take front burner now in our nation. The issues of state police, because the state governors have been rendered powerless, even by our own constitution. The buck stops with the government. When it was the PDP government, when people were killed in Agatu, we held the government responsible. It is not about a political party. It is not about who or where somebody is from. If it is another government in place, they need to be held responsible because that is their responsibility. And I think that this will go a long way to start to provide a solution to these issues if we put the blame squarely where it should be. Whether or not we're not being united as a nation is the responsibility of the government to galvanize us together as one people. That is why we have a government. Otherwise, it will be a state of anarchy in any nation. So I would want to implore the National Assembly, the House of Reps, and the Senate to realize that we need to start to put some bite to the resolutions that we make, because we recognize we have an executive now that does not seem to appreciate or respond to whatever resolutions that we take. What are we going to do differently in this regard? How are we going to put our foot down to ensure that the security apparatus is changed, that the security chiefs are replaced because they do not have the moral resolve to still remain in those positions? What are we going to do to ensure we start the process for state police? What are we going to do? The buck stops with us in that regard as a legislature to know how to hold this executive accountable. Thank you very much.
To be followed before that declaration can be made. Secondly, that this House do declare the heartless killing of women and children in Plateau State and other parts of the country as genocide. The clear definition of genocide is in
complete tandem with the events that occurred in Plateau State. So you moved it to?
My honorable colleagues, but this will enable us to, as well as the widespread nature. The second one, honorable, my amendments are as follows: that they are clash and
a complete lack of adherence. Also concerned that most of the accidents
May the gentle souls of the departed rest in perfect peace.